What up? It's your man G. Lewis, and welcome to the Sipp. Today I want to share with you guys a quote that I have here from Dr. Carter G. Woodson. The quote is from his book, The Miseducation of the Negro, published in 1933. The quote is, it says, "If you can make a man feel inferior, you will never have to compel him to seek an inferior status. He will seek it for himself." Wow, let that sink in. He will seek it for himself. The reason I bring that up is because I want to touch on a subject here that some may find uncomfortable, especially if you are from the Sipp. But before I speak on it, let me give you a little context about why I chose to use this quote to open up this video today. About a year and a half ago, Showtime released a documentary on the basketball life of Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, formerly known as Chris Jackson, who's from the Gulf Coast, Gulfport. Now in that video, or that documentary, there was a particular part that resonated and stayed with me. Mahmoud was sharing his childhood experiences growing up. And in one particular story that he shared, he was gathered around some adults. He spent a lot of time hanging out with adults. And on this particular day, he said he noticed that when the adults were gathered around, and if they had problems on the job or, they just blowing off some steam, they would be full of life. They would go off about the supervisor or this, that, and the other. He said they were full of life, proud, strong, But he noticed when people of the dominant culture would be in earshot of their conversations, all the adults would lower their voice to almost a whisper. And he said that their physical posture would change. He said they would slump, shoulders would slump, and some would even, lower their head. And he said he could never understand why. Why, when the dominant culture was not present in these conversations, they would be full of life and they would speak their mind, But when someone from the dominant culture presence would be known or felt, everything would come to almost a hush, a whisper. The shoulders would slump and their heads would bow. This quote that I just shared with you guys is exactly what Dr. Carter G. Woodson was referring to in The Miseducation of the Negro. See, if you can make a man feel inferior, and you do it for years and centuries, you don't have to keep your foot on his neck. He will begin to take on those characteristics that the dominant culture expect of him. Now, my own experiences growing up in the Sipp, I've witnessed what Mahmoud has spoken about. But my story is a little bit different. I used to own a business. I had a couple of young brothers that worked for me. They're about 10 years younger than me. And I had consignment business dealings with different retail shops. And when we would go around to restock our supplies or to make a collection on the money that was owed, I noticed those guys would do the same thing that Mahmoud spoke about the adults doing when he was growing up. Before we get to the stores, they'd be full of life. They running their mouth, doing as, young guys do, you know what I'm saying? They, braggadocious, But the minute we would hit those department stores, their whole demeanor would change. They would fall back while I approached the counter to speak to the supervisor, the manager of the store, they would fall back, or they would just wander and meander around the store, not making contact with the supervisor or any of the staff. And one day I asked him, hey man, why every time we go into these stores to collect money or to put more product on the shelves, you guys fall back, man? I mean, I noticed y'all whole personality changed. And what they said to me only solidifies what Dr. Carter G. Woodson wrote in his book. One of them told me, he said, well, you know how to talk to them people. And I asked him, what do you mean by I know how to talk to those people? He say, well, we don't feel comfortable. I say, what do you mean you don't feel comfortable? I say, we're not in here stealing. We're not in here making a purchase. We're in here conducting business. We have a product that's in demand. We back here to supply it. And in certain days we go in there, we only there to collect the check. So why do you feel uncomfortable? And he said, well, you know how to speak to these people, man. I'm a veteran. I've traveled, outside of Mississippi, and I've lived outside of Mississippi, and I've lived abroad. So they would bring that up to say, you know how to talk to those people, But I knew what they meant. They were afraid of what? I have no idea. But their whole personality would change. So it's the same thing that Dr. Carter G. Woodson speaks about in that book. I want to read that quote again, man. I want to read that quote again. Let it sink in. If you can make a man feel inferior, you will never have to compel him to seek an inferior status. He will seek it for himself. Brothers and sisters of the Sipp, Jim Crow is over with, man. A lot of us need to let go of those old, what I call fixed mindset. We got to let go of the fixed mindset. Jim Crow is over with. You have every right to pursue your goals, your dreams, and your aspirations. And you have every right to walk into a store, into a conference room, into a bank, and just stand in line, proud and strong, and look him in the eyes when he speaks to you. Now, what I'm saying is not indicative of all the people in the Sipp. By no means, and I don't want that to get misconstrued with anybody who's watching this who's not from the state. But those with inside the state, just like I was able to identify what Mahmoud was talking about, you can identify with what I'm saying. You know people like this. Maybe they're cousins, maybe they're older relatives, maybe they're friends. We know who some of these people are. And it's far too many of us, man. We got to shake that Jim Crow mentality, man. This is our time. This is our time. This is the best time. As I said in my last video, the world right now, it's an even playing field. The great equalizer is this thing called the internet, man. We can get on here, we can learn. If you don't feel like comfortable because you don't know how to speak in certain settings around people, you can always upgrade your skills. If you don't know a particular thing and you feel like you don't want to open your mouth and put your mind on display, as some of the old folks used to say, pick up a book, read a book. And I recommend starting with this book, The Miseducation of the Negro by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. If you're a parent, you're a grandparent, I recommend you get this book, read it yourself, and also purchase a copy for a young person in your family or a young person in your neighborhood. This is not a sponsored video, none of that. This is just knowledge that I think we need to pick up on so we can become cognizant of what's going on and how we move in this world. So that's it for today. I just want to share that bit of information with you, man, with you guys. Let you know, man. Shh. We got to shake off that mentality, man. Shake off that defeatist mentality. Shake off that fixed mindset and develop a growth mindset. This your man, G. Lewis. Once again, to my country cousins from the East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, and all points in between. I love to see you in my next video. God bless.